Jonathan Carrington woke before dawn as he did most mornings, the soft hum of the city still far away when he slipped out of bed. The first thing he noticed was the quiet. In his spacious bedroom, sunlight filtered through tall windows, painting gentle lines across a sleek marble floor. Despite the sprawling mansion around him, he always felt a touch of emptiness in those early hours, as though the walls themselves were waiting for company. He moved through the silent corridors with the ease of someone who owned every square inch, yet carried in his heart the memory of someone he had lost. Jonathan dressed carefully, choosing a tailored charcoal suit that fit him perfectly, the fabric soft against his skin. He had spent a fortune on custom clothing over the years, but the cost meant little when you were one of the richest men in the country. He paused at a full-length mirror, smoothing the lapel of his jacket, taking a deep breath. His reflection showed a man in his mid-30s with dark hair neatly combed and sharp blue eyes that often looked serious, sometimes stern. Yet today his gaze held a softness, a trace of the man he used to be before grief had settled into his life. He descended the grand staircase, each step echoing slightly, until he reached a smaller staircase leading to the children's wing of the house. There, he found his son Spencer still asleep, nestled under a cozy quilt embroidered with little rockets and stars. The boy's chest rose and fell gently, his small hand curled against a soft toy dinosaur. Jonathan paused, watching the slow rise of Spencer's shoulders. Every time he looked at his son, he felt a twinge of both pride and sorrow. Pride because Spencer was bright, curious, and kind-hearted beyond his years. Sorrow because of everything Spencer had lost already. His mother, Jonathan's beloved wife, who had passed away in a sudden illness 3 years ago. Jonathan never spoke of her in public, but each morning he carried a quiet weight in his heart, remembering her laughter, her gentle words to their son, and the warmth she brought to their home. With a soft smile, Jonathan turned away so as not to wake Spencer. He left a small wooden box by the bedside, inside it a carefully chosen note for his son. Today's message read, "Good morning, buddy. Remember, no matter what, you have all the love in the world waiting for you." He had started writing these notes when Spencer could read, and the ritual gave Jonathan a sense of purpose in days when his business demands threatened to consume him. Jonathan headed to the kitchen, where his longtime butler, Mr. Alvarez, was already preparing breakfast. The scent of freshly brewed coffee and warm toast filled the air, along with the faint aroma of scrambled eggs cooking gently in butter. Jonathan appreciated these simple pleasures even more because he knew how easily they could slip away. He poured himself a cup of coffee, black with 1 sugar, and took a seat at the polished oak table. Mr. Alvarez placed a plate of scrambled eggs, toast, and fruit in front of him. The meal was modest by the mansion's standards, but exactly what Jonathan preferred. As he ate, Jonathan reviewed the day's schedule on his tablet: meetings with investors, product strategy discussions, a board meeting via video conference, and in the evening, a charity gala he had organized to raise funds for a children's hospital. He sighed, running a hand through his hair. Public appearances were never his favorite thing. Standing in front of spotlights and cameras, making speeches about generosity and hope, it felt almost hollow to him. He had given millions to worthy causes, yet standing there talking about them never filled the emptiness he sometimes felt inside. Once breakfast was done, he kissed his empty chair and stood, thanking Mr. Alvarez quietly as he passed. He walked through the main hall where priceless artworks lined the walls and statues stood on marble pedestals. Each piece was a testament to his success, a reminder that he had built an empire from scratch. But today he barely noticed the art. His mind was focused on his son, on the gala later that night, and on a nagging sense of restlessness he couldn't shake. He stepped outside into the driveway where his black luxury sedan waited. The car gleamed under the soft morning light. It was one of many vehicles he owned, but he chose it today because it was spacious enough to drive Spencer in comfort when the boy woke up. The city would soon come alive with noise and traffic, but for now, the street was still and calm. The drive into the office was smooth, the roads nearly empty at this hour. Jonathan watched through the windshield as the sky shifted from pale gray to hints of gold. He thought about the presentation he had to give in an hour, about the data, points, and market trends he'd been studying all week. But as he drove past the familiar landmarks, an old oak tree in the park, the corner bakery with its colorful awning, his thoughts drifted back to his home and his son. Spencer would be thrilled to come to the office someday, to see where his father worked, to play with the friendly receptionist's little dog. Yet Jonathan worried that his world, built on boardrooms and stock prices, might be too rigid for a curious boy. Pulling up to his company's sleek glass building, Jonathan stepped out and was immediately surrounded by his security detail. They were professional, discreet, his unseen guardians who ensured nothing disturbed his day. He nodded curtly to them and walked inside, ready to switch into CEO mode, confident, analytical, decisive. His assistant, Clara, greeted him with a warm smile and handed him a folder with the morning's top news headlines. They included stories about his own company's latest product launch, praise for the charity gala, and a piece on his personal donation to a scholarship program. He scanned the articles with a practiced eye, offering thanks here and there, but his mind kept wandering back to Spencer's note hidden in that wooden box. The morning passed in a blur of meetings. Jonathan led a discussion on expansion into new markets, negotiating terms that would bring billions in revenue. He reviewed a technical report from the engineering team, his eyes lighting up at an innovative idea for renewable energy storage. He signed off on financial forecasts, his signature crisp and assured. And yet, with every high-stakes decision, he felt a small pang of wonder. Did any of this really matter if he wasn't sharing his success with someone who needed him? By midday, Jonathan excused himself to take a short break. He found a quiet corner on the rooftop terrace, where potted plants softened the view of steel and glass. He closed his eyes and let the breeze wash over him, feeling grateful for the chance to breathe. In that moment, he made a mental promise to himself. No matter how busy he became, he would carve out time for Spencer every day, not just with notes in a box, but with real moments, laughter, play, and bedtime stories. An hour later, he was back in the boardroom looking every bit the powerful businessman. But inside, he felt a quiet shift, as though he had realigned his priorities. Success and wealth were important, he told himself, but they were not the purpose of his life. His true purpose lay in his small son, in the joy of watching Spencer grow, and in honoring the memory of the woman who had brought them both into this world. As the sun dipped lower in the sky, Jonathan prepared to leave the office. He checked his watch. Just enough time to drive home, pick up Spencer, and head together to the gala. Clara handed him his coat and wished him luck with his speech. He offered a genuine smile in return, feeling an unfamiliar warmth spread through him. Maybe tonight would be different. Maybe tonight he would not simply stand on a stage and talk at people. Maybe he would share a part of himself, his story of love and loss, and connect with the families whose lives he hoped to improve with his donations. He slid into his car, the engine purring to life, and pressed the button to lower the backseat windows slightly. He glanced in the rearview mirror, imagining seeing Spencer's eager face there. He thought about the note waiting at home, about rushing back to scoop up his boy and hold him tight. The thought brought a smile to his lips, softening the lines around his eyes. As he drove away from the glass tower that symbolized his achievements, Jonathan felt a strange sense of anticipation. He sensed that something unexpected might happen tonight, something that could change his life in ways no amount of money or power could. He didn't yet know what that something would be, but he felt ready. Ready to open his heart, ready to welcome change, and ready to learn that even in a world of wealth, the greatest treasures were found in the most unlooked-for places. Jonathan pulled into the circular driveway of his home just as the sky turned dusky pink. Street lamps flickered on, casting soft pools of light across the manicured lawn. He unbuckled his seatbelt and exhaled deeply, feeling the weight of the day lift slightly. Tonight had been different. His speech at the charity gala had flowed from the heart, and for the first time in a long time, he had spoken not as a billionaire, but as a father who wanted to heal the world his own way. He reached for the door handle, intent on grabbing Spencer, and heading to the ballroom together. but something about the car felt unsettled. That unsettled feeling grew stronger as he slid open the rear door. At first he saw nothing, just the neat leather seats glowing faintly under the interior lights. Then he heard it, a soft, muffled sob that made his chest tighten. He froze for a moment, scanning the back seat. There, huddled on the plush cushions, were two little girls. Their clothes were thin and dirty, their hair tangled. They pressed against each other as if they shared one heart, one breath. Jonathan's breath caught. He hadn't expected this. He didn't know how they had slipped past his security or why they were here. All he knew was that they needed him. He knelt beside the car and whispered, "Hey there. Are you okay?" His voice came out gentler than he had planned. The older twin, eyes wide and watery, peeked at him through strands of hair. The younger curled tighter, trying to hide her face. Jonathan reached into the back seat and gently lifted the younger girl's chin. Her eyes were like polished onyx, deep and frightened. "It's all right," he said, offering a small smile. "I'm not going to hurt you." In that moment, he realized how meaningless the walls of his mansion were compared to the need of these two small girls. He opened the back door fully and motioned for them to come out. The older twin climbed onto the driveway first, her movements uncertain, like a fawn testing new legs. The younger followed, glancing back at the safety of the car as though she might flee. Jonathan guided them to the front porch, wrapping his long coat around their small shoulders. The coat was far too big, its sleeves brushing the ground, but it smelled of his cologne, and the girls seemed to take comfort in the unfamiliar scent. He could feel their bodies trembling against his side. Inside, the foyer was warm and bright. A grand chandelier hung overhead, and a vase of fresh flowers sat on a marble table. Jonathan carried the twins inside and sat them on a velvet-lined bench while he called for Mr. Alvarez. His butler arrived almost instantly, calm and composed, though Jonathan could see surprise flicker in his eyes. "Sir," he said softly, "what should I do?" Jonathan shook his head, still trying to catch his own breath. "Let's get them some blankets and tea," he said, "and call someone from social services." He paused. "But first, let me learn their names." The twins sat close together, clutching the oversized coat, their eyes tracking him. He knelt before them and said, "I'm Jonathan Carrington. What are your names?" The older spoke first, her voice a whisper. "Maria." Then the younger, "Isabella." Their names felt musical on his tongue, full of history and life he wanted to protect. He smiled. "Maria Isabella, it's good to meet you. You're safe here." The girls exchanged a glance that spoke volumes of shared sorrow and relief. Maria leaned slightly toward Jonathan, and Isabella nestled closer to her sister, breathing, easier now that they were inside. Mr. Alvarez returned with woolen blankets and a tray of chamomile tea. The scent filled the air, soothing and warm. Jonathan wrapped one blanket around Maria and another around Isabella, then poured tea into 2 small cups from his gold-trimmed china set. Maria sipped cautiously, her small hand trembling. Jonathan knelt beside them, offering gentle words, hoping to keep their fear at bay. He asked simple questions: where they lived, who they lived with, how they came to be in his car. The twins, eyes filled with tears as they recounted how their mother had fallen ill, and how they had wandered the streets, begging and sleeping on cold sidewalks. Their father had vanished months ago, searching for work he never found. Their words came in halting fragments, but each one carried the weight of survival. As they spoke, Jonathan's heart broke. He realized how much he had taken for granted: the comfort of a home, the certainty of family, the safety provided by money. Here were 2 children whose lives had been filled with hardship, now thrust into his world of luxury and privilege. He felt a surge of protectiveness so strong it made his eyes sting. He reached out, brushing a strand of hair from Maria's face. "You don't have to be afraid anymore," he said quietly. "I promise you you're safe with me." Maria's eyes locked onto his, and for a moment, Jonathan saw herself reflected there, frightened, yet yearning for hope. Mr. Alvarez quietly made the call to social services, requesting a social worker to visit first thing in the morning. In the meantime, he had arranged for a nurse to check the girls' health. Jonathan watched as a professional, kind woman examined their hands, their foreheads, their small bodies. The girls were thin, undernourished, but otherwise unharmed. The nurse nodded appreciatively at Jonathan. "You've done the right thing, sir," she said. "They needed help and you gave it to them." He nodded, feeling both relief and a new sense of responsibility. Once the nurse left, Jonathan escorted the twins to a pair of guest rooms on the children's wing. Each room was furnished with a twin bed, a desk, shelves full of books, and a plush rug. Toys were neatly arranged on a low table. He showed them how to turn on a nightlight shaped like a moon and how to adjust the soft music that filled the room. Isabella picked up a stuffed rabbit and hugged it tightly, while Maria ran her fingers over the pages of a fairy tale book. Jonathan knelt at the doorway, watching them settle in. He placed a gentle hand on each girl's shoulder. "Sleep well," he said. "I'll be right next door if you need anything." Their nods were small but sure, and Jonathan slowly closed the door. Back in his own study, Jonathan sank into a leather chair, exhaustion finally catching up with him. He stared at the door behind which the twins slept, feeling a tenderness he had never known before. All his life he had built walls around himself, walls made of steel, glass, and meticulous planning. But tonight those walls felt hollow, meaningless without another soul to share his life. He reached for his phone and opened a blank document. With careful typing, he wrote a letter to the parents and guests of tomorrow's fundraiser. "Tonight I found 2 young sisters on my car seat, lost and frightened. Their courage and spirit reminded me why we gather tomorrow, to give hope to those who need it most." He paused, fingers hovering over the keyboard, then smiled at the thought of Spencer reading that letter someday. Dawn would come soon, bringing social workers, reporters, and possibly judgment. But in this late hour, Jonathan closed his eyes, feeling a peace he hadn't felt in years. He knew the coming days would be challenging. Papers to sign, arrangements to make, hearts to heal. Yet he also knew his life had changed forever. In the smallest visitors he had found a purpose grander than any boardroom victory. He whispered into the quiet, "Welcome to your new home, Maria and Isabella." And as he turned off the lamp and walked down the hall, he felt for the first time in a long time that he was exactly where he belonged. The first light of morning crept quietly through the curtains of the twin girls' room, casting soft stripes across Isabella's small face as she blinked awake. Maria stirred in the bed next to her, hugging the stuffed rabbit close. Neither made a sound at first, as though afraid to break the calm. Outside their door, faint footsteps signaled the gentle arrival of Mr. Alvarez carrying a tray of warm milk and toast. He paused at the threshold, offering them kind smiles as he set the tray on the low table they shared. The girls exchanged a hopeful glance and then leaned forward eagerly. Jonathan's world had always moved at the relentless pace of investors, demands, and boardroom schedules. But today he felt the luxury of time slow to match the careful rhythm of these 2 fragile lives. Downstairs, the kitchen was alive with activity. He could hear the soft clatter of dishes and the hiss of coffee brewing. Mr. Alvarez had arranged a simple breakfast of scrambled eggs, whole grain toast, and fresh fruit, foods he hoped would replenish the twins' thin frames. A social worker from the local welfare agency was expected at any moment, and Jonathan felt a nervous excitement at the thought. He poured himself a cup of coffee and paced the marble floor, replaying the promise he had made to Maria and Isabella. That they were safe, that they had a home now. For the first time in years, he felt truly accountable not to shareholders, but to 2 small sisters whose trust he dared not betray. Upstairs, the twins ate with polite hunger, their chatter soft and shy. Isabella tucked a lock of hair behind her ear before taking another bite, while Maria looked up at Mr. Alvarez and offered a small, "Thank you." He replied with a gentle nod, then slipped out to give them privacy. The door clicked shut, and, for a moment the girls sat in companionable silence, savoring each mouthful. Then Maria looked at her sister and whispered, "Do you think he's really going to let us stay here?" Isabella swallowed and nodded, eyes wide. He said we're safe. The two girls leaned together, a single silent prayer passing between them that this strange, handsome man named Jonathan would keep his promise. When the social worker arrived, she was professional but warm, carrying a folder of forms and a notebook for her observations. Jonathan greeted her in the foyer and led her along the polished hallways, explaining only the necessary details. 2 girls found in his car last night, no known living father or extended family. Their mother gravely ill and unable to care for them. The social worker listened carefully, her pen scratching as she recorded their names, ages, and health details confirmed by the nurse who had visited earlier. She asked to meet the girls in their room to see how they were doing, and Jonathan accompanied her upstairs, feeling the weight of each step. Outside the twins' door, he hesitated, smoothing his suit jacket. He thought of how thin their arms had been, how frightened they looked under the streetlights. He gripped the doorframe and took a breath, then knocked gently. Maria? Isabella? It's Mr. Carrington and Ms. Patel from Social Services. May we come in? A soft yes came from within, and he stepped aside to allow Ms. Patel inside. The girls looked up from their small table where coloring pages lay half-finished. There were bright suns and smiling stick figures, colors hopeful despite the rough edges. The social worker remarked kindly on their drawings, praising Maria's neat lines and Isabella's bold use of red. After a few questions, mostly about their health, their last meals, where they had slept, the social worker closed her notebook. They're safe for now in your care, she told Jonathan. But I'll need signed temporary guardianship forms to ensure their welfare formally. I can return this afternoon with everything prepared. In the meantime, I'll arrange for their school enrollment and assign a caseworker to guide you. Jonathan nodded, relief flooding him. He signed the papers, his signature deliberate and steady. Watching Maria and Isabella glance between him and the social worker, he felt a surge of protective warmth he had never felt before. These 2 girls, he realized, had become the center of his world overnight. With the formalities complete, Jonathan guided the twins downstairs to meet his son, Spencer. The little boy burst into the room, rubbing sleep from his eyes, his pajama-clad form a picture of innocence. He stopped short when he saw Maria and Isabella seated at the breakfast table. His gaze flicked to his father, who knelt to introduce them. Spencer, these are your new friends, Maria and Isabella. Spencer's eyes widened with curiosity and a hint of shyness. He offered a small wave, which Maria shyly returned. Isabella's lips parted in a smile, and she stood to give him a timid hug. Spencer seemed delighted, returning her embrace with a gentle pat on her back. Jonathan watched this tender interaction, his heart swelling. He invited them all to sit together, and Spencer proudly poured extra milk into the twins' cups. The mood lightened as they began to chat about cartoons and school subjects. Maria confessed her favorite subject was art, while Isabella admitted she loved reading fairy tales. Spencer exclaimed that he had once dressed as a knight for Halloween, and Isabella's eyes sparkled as she told him about a picture book she had read about dragons. Laughter soon filled the kitchen, and Jonathan realized he had never witnessed a more beautiful sound. After breakfast, Clara, Jonathan's assistant, arrived with a cheerful smile. She brought a stack of school supplies, backpacks, notebooks, pencils, and crayons, organized in neat piles. Your Highness, she teased Spencer, bending to his level, we have princess and superhero folders too. What will the twins need? Maria's face lit up as she chose a sparkly pink folder, while Isabella picked one covered in stars. Spencer chose a bright blue folder with a cheetah on the front. They giggled over the selection, and Clara labeled each item before packing them neatly. They'll be ready to start school next week, she said to Jonathan. Transportation and lunches arranged. He thanked her, grateful for her efficiency and kindness. The morning passed with small celebrations, a tour of the house, introductions to the household staff, the gardener who brought them small flowers, the cook who promised to bake them cookies, and a drive around the neighborhood to see the park and playground. Jonathan sat in the back seat beside the twins, pointing out oak trees and friendly faces. Isabella asked about the lake glimmering in the distance, and he promised to take them fishing one weekend. Maria asked him why the streets here were so clean compared to where they had slept, and he gently explained about local services and community support, though he recognized how strange his words must sound to someone who had known only hardship. When lunchtime arrived, Jonathan invited them to join Spencer in his study, where they spread their sandwiches on a low table and colored new pages. He slipped out briefly to make calls, arranging counseling sessions for the girls to help them process their trauma. He felt a deep satisfaction at taking these steps. Every decision was no longer about quarterly profits, but about 2 young lives he was determined to protect. That afternoon, a photographer from the gala organization arrived to take official pictures of Jonathan's donation event. Normally, Jonathan would have avoided the spotlight, but today he found himself pausing to stand with Maria, Isabella, and Spencer side by side. He wrapped an arm around each girl's shoulder, and the photographer captured the moment, an image of hope and new beginnings. Jonathan's lips curved in a genuine smile, the kind that reached his eyes. It struck him how his world had shifted. Where once his life revolved around power, it now centered on family. Racially varied, imperfect, yet wholly devoted. By evening, the twins were beginning to relax into their new routine. They helped Spencer choose dinner from the menu, spaghetti with tomato sauce, a favorite for all children. As they ate around the long table, they chatted about school uniforms and lunch choices, their nervousness fading. Afterward, they each chose a bedtime story. Isabella picked a book of fairy tales and Maria chose a collection of poems. Jonathan settled on the edge of Isabella's bed, reading tales of brave princesses and kind-hearted heroes. Spencer sat on Maria's bed, listening intently to rhymes about stars and dreams. The sisters listened with rapt attention, their small hands clutching their blankets. When the lights went out, Jonathan kissed each girl on the forehead. "Good night," he whispered. "Sweet dreams." They nodded sleepily, drifting off with contented sighs. He lingered by the door, watching their gentle breathing. Then he tiptoed out, closing the door softly behind him. In his study later, that night, Jonathan sat at his desk reviewing the day with a quiet joy. He drafted thank you notes to the social worker and to Clara, praising their professionalism and kindness. He updated his calendar to include dinner with Spencer and the twins twice a week, and designated every Sunday afternoon as family adventure time, a small promise to himself that he would never again let business consume all his focus. He sent a quick message to his board, deferring tomorrow's midday earnings call so he could attend the twins' school orientation. Before bed, he stood at his bedroom window looking out over the estate. The lights in the children's wing glowed softly like beacons of hope. His mind wandered to the lives of Maria and Isabella before he found them, and he vowed to give them not only a home, but a childhood filled with laughter, learning, and love. He thought of his late wife, imagining the joy she would have felt seeing their FYI. Jonathan woke early, the first rays of sun slipping through the window blinds. He stretched and glanced at the clock, 6:15 a.m. His eyes drifted to the quiet hallway leading to the children's wing, where he knew 2 little faces would soon peep out at him. Today was the twins' first day at their new school, and though Jonathan had organized everything, the uniforms, the supplies, the bus route, he felt a flutter of nerves in his chest. He rose, dressed in a soft sweater and chinos, and headed downstairs to the kitchen. Mr. Alvarez was already there, laying a simple breakfast of oatmeal, fruit, and warm milk on the table. The smell of cinnamon drifted through the air. Jonathan poured himself a cup of coffee and poured glasses of milk for Maria and Isabella. He offered them a warm smile as they entered, still in their school uniforms, matching navy skirts, white blouses, and little red sweaters with the school crest sewn above the pocket. "Good morning," he said, seating himself. "How do you feel about your first day?" Maria tapped her spoon against the bowl. "A little scared," she admitted, her voice soft. Isabella hugged her bowl close. "I hope I make a friend," she whispered. Jonathan reached across the table and gave each girl's hand a gentle squeeze. "You will. You're both strong and kind. Anyone would be lucky to know you." After breakfast, Jonathan helped the twins with their backpacks. Spencer joined them, his own backpack slung over one shoulder. He looked proud and perhaps a bit protective. He held the door open as they stepped outside into the crisp morning air. The school bus rounded the corner just then, its yellow paint shining in the dawn. The driver, Mrs. Ferguson, waved cheerfully as it rolled to a stop. Jonathan knelt to the twins' level. "Remember, if you need anything, you can ask your teacher or call me on this." He handed them his cell phone, programmed with school contacts and emergency numbers. Maria took it carefully, eyes wide at the responsibility. Isabella gave him a quick hug before boarding the bus, followed by Maria. Spencer waved shyly until the bus door closed, then turned back to his father. "Well," Jonathan said, standing, "shall we get you to your meeting?" Clara, his assistant, had arranged for him to meet with the gala committee at 9. Spencer nodded and jumped into the car next to his dad. As they drove away, Jonathan watched the bus shrink in the distance, carrying his new daughters toward a world full of unknowns. Inside the boardroom, the day's first meeting began. Normally, Jonathan would dive right into financial reports and legal documents, but his mind kept drifting back to Maria and Isabella. He found himself doodling 2 small hearts in the margin of his notebook. Clara caught his eye and smiled, noticing his distraction. At the right moment, she slipped him a note. "Girls called this morning. They're okay." Relief washed over him. He cleared his throat and focused on the discussion, but inside he felt a soft warmth, knowing they had settled in. Meanwhile, on the school campus, Maria and Isabella walked into their classroom hand in hand. Their new teacher, Mrs. Clark, greeted them with a bright smile. The other children paused from coloring and whispered among themselves, curious about the 2 new girls. Maria sat beside Isabella at a small wooden desk, their pencil cases open and ready. At first, the twins felt shy, but Mrs. Clark introduced them gently, asking each child to share a fun fact about themselves. Maria spoke about her love of painting, and Isabella mentioned her favorite storybook. The class applauded politely, and the twins exchanged small smiles. Recess came next, and the children spilled onto the playground. Maria and Isabella lingered by the swings, watching groups form around jungle gyms and slides. A girl named Lily approached them, her pigtails bouncing. "Hi, I'm Lily," she said. "Do you want to swing with me?" Isabella's face brightened and Maria nodded. The 3 girls shared the swing set, laughing as they soared back and forth. Nearby, Spencer waved from the sidelines, and the twins waved back, their smiles growing wider with each push of the swing. Back at home, Jonathan and Spencer returned after the meeting. They sat in the living room, surrounded by cushions and soft rugs, waiting for the bus to drop off Maria and Isabella. Spencer pointed out birds outside the window while Jonathan sorted through papers for the next appointment. Every few minutes, they glanced at the street. Just before noon, the bus rolled to a stop, and the twins hopped down, their faces glowing. They ran up the driveway and into Jonathan's arms. He lifted each one in a bear hug, spinning them around. "How was it?" he asked, setting them down. Maria's cheeks were flushed. "Good," she said, but then added, "I think I'll like it here." Isabella nodded vigorously. "And Lily saved me when I was stuck on the monkey bars," she added, eyes shining with pride. Jonathan laughed. "That's wonderful." They went back into the house for lunch. Grilled cheese sandwiches and tomato soup. Spencer described his morning at school, while Maria and Isabella talked about art class and story time. Jonathan listened, smiling, feeling the joy of a normal family day that he had feared he might never know again. He admired how quickly the twins had adapted and how kind their classmates had been. In the afternoon, Jonathan invited the twins to the home office, where he showed them his workspace. He demonstrated how he used the computer to check emails and taught them how to draw a simple chart to track numbers rising and falling. They giggled at the rows of spreadsheets but listened intently when he explained that data helped him make important decisions. "Someday," he told them, "you can learn to run a company if you wish, but only if you want to." Maria's eyes sparkled. "I want to make art," she said. Jonathan nodded. Then you will. Later, a courier arrived with packages of books requested by the twins. Jonathan had spent the afternoon ordering art supplies, novels, and educational games online. The girls unwrapped watercolor sets, sketchbooks, and a collection of fairy tale books. Isabella jumped up and down. "Thank you," she exclaimed, hugging her new rabbit plushie. Maria ran her fingers over the spines of the books, already imagining the pictures she would draw. Jonathan smiled, feeling a deep contentment in providing these simple luxuries that felt so precious to them. As evening approached, Jonathan prepared dinner in the kitchen alongside the cook, Ms. Reyes. She guided him through making a simple vegetable stir-fry that the twins loved. Spencer helped by washing vegetables, and Maria and Isabella set the table with colorful plates. The kitchen echoed with chatter and laughter, the clink of utensils, the sizzle of vegetables in the pan. For Jonathan, it was a scene of pure happiness. After dinner, they settled in the family room for a board game. Spencer explained the rules of Candy Quest, and the twins eagerly joined in. They took turns rolling dice, moving little plastic figures along the board. Jonathan watched their faces light up when they landed on lucky spots or drew special cards. Even Ms. Reyes and Mr. Alvarez peeked in, delighted by the merriment. When bedtime arrived, the twins fetched their pajamas from the shelf in the hallway and returned to the children's wing. Jonathan read 2 stories that night, one about a brave knight rescuing a dragon's friend, and another about a lonely star who found a family in the sky. Spencer and the twins listened, their eyes heavy but bright with excitement. Jonathan tucked them in, smoothing blankets and kissing foreheads. He paused in the doorway, looking back at the peaceful scene, and realized how much his life had transformed in just a few days. Alone in his study, Jonathan reflected on the day. He had balanced business tasks with fatherhood, guided the twins through challenges, and watched them blossom. He drafted a quick email to the school principal, praising the teachers and offering to volunteer for upcoming field trips. Then he closed his laptop and made one last call to his doctor, arranging a checkup for Maria and Isabella to ensure they were healthy and thriving. As the house settled into silence, Jonathan stood at the balcony, gazing at the stars above. He thought of the journey ahead, the hurdles of blending business and family, guiding 2 young sisters through healing and growth. But he also felt confident. He had learned in the past few days that wealth was not only measured in dollars but in love, trust, and simple moments shared. With Maria and Isabella asleep just down the hall, he whispered into the night, "Tomorrow, we'll discover even more wonders together." And with that promise, he turned off the light, his heart full and ready for whatever the next day would bring. The morning sunlight filtered through the living room windows as Jonathan sipped his coffee, listening to the gentle hum of activity around him. It was the day of the big charity gala, an event he had organized long before discovering Maria and Isabella in his car. Now the evening held a deeper meaning. It would celebrate not just his success but the new family he had forged. He glanced around at Spencer, who was busy tying Maria's shoelaces for their special outfits, and at Isabella, who examined herself in a mirror, adjusting the ribbon in her hair. The twins' eyes sparkled with excitement and a touch of nerves. Jonathan smiled, feeling a swell of pride. He ruffled Spencer's hair and said, "Let's make tonight one to remember." They all piled into the sleek black car that had once been the scene of that fateful discovery. This time, the back seat held laughter and chatter instead of whispered sobs. Spencer pointed out his favorite streetlights, while Maria and Isabella compared their dresses, hers in soft blue, the other in gentle pink. Jonathan listened, his heart light. As they drove through the city streets, he thought about how different things felt now. The board meetings, the financial forecasts, the endless conferences, all of it still awaited him. But none of it mattered as much as this moment, sharing the ride with his 2 daughters and his son, bound not by blood, but by love and choice. Arriving at the grand ballroom, they were greeted by a cascade of lights and a soft melody from the string quartet playing in the corner. Journalists and guests paused to admire the family as they stepped onto the red carpet. Photographers called out, "Over here," and flashes lit the air like fireflies. Maria clung to Jonathan's hand, but Isabella squeezed Spencer's fingers, finding courage in her new brother's presence. Jonathan guided them past the cameras and into the hall, where tables shimmered with crystal glasses and silverware, and a huge banner read, "Hope for Every Child." He led them to a private table near the stage where they sat together, their shoulders touching in quiet solidarity. As the program began, Jonathan took the stage to speak. His voice was steady, but warm, and he looked out over the faces in the audience before his gaze found Maria, Isabella, and Spencer. He spoke of his late wife's dream of helping children, of how that dream had guided him in building his company, and now, how it had led him to these two brave little girls. He told their story, how they had appeared in his life on a rainy night, frightened and alone, and how their resilience had opened his heart. Tears shimmered in the audience as he spoke, but his own eyes were bright with hope. "Tonight," he said, "is not just a fundraiser. It is a celebration of family, chosen and cherished. It is proof that love can turn strangers into family, and strangers' lives into new beginnings." When he stepped down, the crowd rose in applause, and he felt Maria and Isabella's small hands clap if uncertainly, and Spencer's enthusiastic cheers at his side. After the speeches, the guests mingled, and Jonathan introduced the twins to friends and philanthropists. Each introduction was a little story. A woman who ran a literacy program, a man who built playgrounds, another who provided health care to remote villages. Maria listened intently, her eyes wide at each new idea. Isabella asked thoughtful questions, and Spencer proudly announced, "My sisters are going to change the world someday." Jonathan watched them, feeling a sense of purpose that no boardroom victory could match. He talked quietly with Spencer about possible volunteer projects at school and asked Maria if she would like to paint a mural in the children's wing, while Isabella volunteered to help distribute books at the hospital's reading hour. They nodded enthusiastically, already dreaming of ways to give back. In that moment, Jonathan knew he had sparked something in them, a spark of compassion that would one day grow into a flame. As the evening wound down, the family retreated to a quieter reception area, where a small band played soft jazz. Sweet treats and warm cider were served, and the twins shared a slice of chocolate cake with Spencer. Jonathan sat beside them, feeling the smooth fabric of his suit and the warmth of their presence. He thought about how, only days ago, he had been a man lost in grief and duty, shielded by his wealth from the pain of the world. But now wealth was simply a tool, a means to protect, to nourish, and to inspire. He watched Maria feed crumbs of cake to a white kitten that had wandered into the room, and Isabella stroked its fur gently. Spencer tickled the kitten's belly, making it purr. Laughter drifted through the air like soft music. Finally, it was time to leave. Jonathan gathered the twins in his arms and Spencer beside him. Outside, a cool breeze ruffled their hair as they made their way back to the car. He buckled them in, one by one, and settled into the driver's seat. As they drove away from the glittering lights of the gala, silence filled the car, comfortable, contented. The twins dozed, leaning against Spencer's shoulders, and Jonathan felt as though the whole world had fallen away, leaving only this gentle knight and his precious family. Back at home, Jonathan carried each child to their room. He tucked them in, brushing hair back from foreheads and placing gentle kisses on each cheek. He whispered promises of new adventures and reassured them of his love. As he closed the last door, he paused to look at the hallway where their rooms glowed softly. He thought of the journey behind him and the road ahead, of school recitals, of scraped knees to mend, of birthdays to celebrate, of tearful goodbyes and triumphant returns. He felt ready for it all. In his own bedroom, Jonathan paused before a framed photograph on his dresser. It showed him beaming, with Spencer between his arms and Maria and Isabella on either side, all four faces radiant. He traced the glass with a fingertip and said softly, "Thank you." He lay down, closing his eyes, listening to the hush of the night. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, paperwork, meetings, and more decisions to make. But he fell asleep, with the knowledge that he no longer faced them alone. He had a family, chosen by fate and bound by love, and together, they would face whatever came next. And in that peaceful darkness, Jonathan Carrington finally felt whole.